Hello everybody, how's it going? So I was just chilling outside, eating my breakfast and enjoying the nice weather. And I started to get this vision of consciousness, kind of like a visual metaphor for the nature of life and consciousness. And I thought it was really interesting. I've never really thought about it this way before. So I figured I would jump on here and share it because maybe it'll help someone kind of get a better understanding of all of this. It did for me, at least. But it kind of reminds me of the fish analogy, which I've described in one of my other videos, about how the fish wouldn't really have an awareness of water unless it swam to the surface and was able to view the water from an outside perspective. Because it's kind of hard to grasp what life is when you're so immersed in life. How can you take an objective view on life when the only way you're able to view anything is because you're alive, you know? I mean, we can speculate about life all day, but no matter what we come up with, our ideas are still subjective. They will always be limited to the perspective we have. But anyway, with that in mind, I got this image and I basically saw consciousness as this big bubble. And as consciousness grows and expands, the bubble gets larger. And eventually, once it grows large enough, the surface of this big bubble starts to bubble up and form these tiny little bubbles that grow and break off from the big bubble and appear to be separate. And so I see this big bubble as collective consciousness and all the tiny bubbles as us, little fractals of consciousness that have split off from the unified consciousness. In a literal sense, you can think of the big bubble as Earth, and all the baby bubbles as humans and animals, beings who have the ability to move around freely and independently from the Earth. And you can think of the rising bubbles that have not yet broken away as plants, forms of life that are still connected to the Earth and do not have the ability to move around or perceive of concepts that separate them from this big bubble. They are literally and metaphorically connected to the big bubble, because that is as far as their consciousness extends. Like I said, as consciousness expands, bubbles expand. So if a tiny bubble expanded its awareness, it would grow larger and larger, and this represents a superconscious being. These are the people who have this powerful magnetic aura. They just radiate so much love and light, and you can tell when you're in the presence of these people. If you notice, the bigger the bubble grows, the more bubbles it touches around it. So just being around these people can raise your vibration and touch you on a soul level. And this is actually something that has inspired me from the beginning of my journey. I've encountered some of these people and I would just think, what do they have? Why am I feeling this way around them? I want whatever they have. And of course I am overgeneralizing when I say those people, because you can't just put people into different categories. There's so many different levels to it, but you know what I'm trying to say. And then I started thinking about the ego. When we believe that we're separate and we are driven solely by our ego and we are on a constant quest to feed and satisfy our ego, I see that as the force that propels the bubble outward, away from the source consciousness. So the more someone expands their consciousness, the larger their bubble will grow, and the more someone boosts their ego, the farther their bubble will move away. As I'm sure you know, there are many people out there who are sitting on a lot of material wealth and appear to have a lot of worldly power and influence. Their bubbles may be towering way above all the others, yet many of them are the most disconnected from source. And I'm not equating material wealth with disconnection, because I truly believe that financial wealth is a side effect of spiritual wealth. But again, I'm generalizing because not all spiritually wealthy people are financially wealthy, and not all financially wealthy people are spiritually wealthy. But nevertheless, I think it serves as a good example and reminder that people with extremely inflated egos are not the most influential people. All of these social media influencers who show off their Gucci bags and fly around in private jets every other weekend, they are not the true influencers. The real influencers are the people with bubbles large enough to reach yours. And when a bubble grows big enough, you'll notice that it gets to a point where it intersects with the source. You could think of this as enlightenment or transcendence. the point where one taps into the source and gains access to the collective consciousness. I think of Jesus, for example, as having this massive bubble. He impacted so many lives, he affected everyone he encountered. He left a major imprint on this planet that still carries over today. That just goes to show that the more conscious you are, the more impact you will have on everyone and everything around you. The bigger the imprint you will leave on this earth, whether you're aware of it or not. And the bigger the bubble, the stronger the connection with Source. The more oneness and in sync you feel with the universe. The self-serving, egocentric being is not going to feel the same sense of oneness and synchronicity. In fact, it will probably feel pretty lost and isolated, like it has to survive out there on the fringe of this infinite universe by itself. Because, yeah, that's a pretty scary feeling, to think that your little bubble is the totality of you, and that you are completely separate from the whole. We humans have the remarkable ability to think ourselves so far out of alignment from Source. That's why I believe that the human experience is one of the most difficult lives to live. It's so easy to get caught up in the density of this planet that we forget who and what we are and why we chose to come here in the first place. It's like the big bubble of collective consciousness sent out all of these little baby bubble messengers to gather information and bring it back. It wanted to experience consciousness from a different perspective. Just like when the fish swims to the surface of the water and is able to look down and see what it had been a part of its whole life, it is able to gain a much better understanding of the nature of its life. We are those fish swimming to the surface, the outermost edge of the universe, and we're retrieving new information. Each and every fish plays an essential role in this process because each fish sees something different and has a unique experience to feed back into the collective. And every life that is lived, every contribution that is made, expands the collective consciousness incrementally. It raises the sea level little by little so that the fish that come after are able to swim a little higher each time. The universe is becoming more and more aware of itself with each bubble it sends out. And each bubble has a unique contribution to make. And the bigger the bubbles grow, the bigger the impact they will have on the collective. So, anyway, I thought that was a really interesting visual that I got. Hopefully I explained all of that in a way that made sense. I hope y'all got something valuable out of this, and as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Stay woke.